All right, folks, here we go. Here is probably the section that you have tuned in for today. The Justin was wrong section, or the death of Google Stadia. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't be on the show today, but news broke of Stadia ending, closing, RIP Stadia. Officially today, Google announced it. So let me share with you the information, and then I've got questions that have been sent in to me. And so we're going to kind of break down my feelings surrounding Google Stadia. And let me tell you, when this news hit, I got a lot of messages came to Justin today, a lot of messages. So we're going to tackle each of those. So earlier today, at about 10:30 Mountain Standard Time, local for me, I saw an article from The Verge saying that Google had shut it down or was shutting it down. And then today, very shortly after, on Stadia's or Google's official website, a message about Stadia and our long-term streaming strategies. This is from Phil Harris, Vice President and General Manager of Stadia. For many years, Google has invested across multiple aspects of gaming industry. We help developers build and distribute games, apps. Okay. A few years ago, we also launched a consumer gaming service, Stadia. And while Stadia's approach to streaming games for consumers was built on a strong technology foundation, it hasn't gained the tractions with users that we expected, so we've made the difficult decision to begin winding down our Stadia streaming service. So really important component there. And so I'm going to step a couple of ways through this conversation. I'm going to step at it from a business perspective. I'm going to step at it from a user perspective as well. From a business perspective, it hasn't gained the traction with users that we expected. So basically, short statement, we didn't find the amount of users, the amount of people who were focused on it, people that were dedicated to it, the people that wanted to use it to gain traction, right? Because everything costs money. Platforms, servers, controllers, game contracts, all these things cost money. This was essentially one of the first questions I was asked about Stadia. Who is Stadia really for? And so the answer to that question is, well, someone like me. But when you move that Venn diagram down, it gets lower and lower and lower and lower. Stadia was for people who didn't want to buy a high-end gaming console, whether it be Xbox or whether it be PlayStation, who wanted to spend a large amount of money. You also needed to be an individual who had a strong and good internet connection and believed in a digital future where all you needed to do was bring a controller and you could move forward. Someone that believed in the idea of cloud gaming. Now, I'm saying this not that you had to believe in cloud gaming, that it was this thing that you were going to, but willing to take a risk and be an early adopter. With so much technology and so many changes in the industry, early adopters are the people that you need to stem this. But I would argue, who was Google Stadia really for? It's a very small demographic. It's for a person, again, like me, who only has one console, the Nintendo Switch. Doesn't have an Xbox, doesn't have a PlayStation, is looking to play games that they can't get on those platforms, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Star Wars, Jedi, Fallen Order. Games like that I couldn't access. That's why I liked Stadia. So who is it for? Someone like me. But there wasn't a lot of people like me, which isn't shocking, right? There are a lot of people who have consoles, Xboxes, PlayStations, PCs who can get these games somewhere else. Let's move on to the next part. We're grateful to the dedicated Stadia players that have been with us from the start. We will be refunding all Stadia hardware purchases made through the Google Store and all games and add-on content purchases made through the Stadia Store. Players will continue to have access to their game library and play through January 18th, 2023, so that they can complete final play sessions. We expect to have the majority of refunds completed by mid-January 2023. So I'm going to stop there. That is absolutely incredible. So as an individual, and I used to, get dunked on about this. Oh, what's going to happen when Stadia shuts down the servers? Blah, blah, blah. You're right. What's going to happen? As an early adopter, you take a little bit of a risk regarding that. You don't know what's going to happen. I didn't know if Stadia was going to be a hit or a sinker, right? But I took a risk. But what they're saying is, by the way, we're giving you all of your money back, all of it. And you can keep playing until the middle of January. That is crazy. Because my forward thought was that in 6 years from now, Google Stadia would shut down and that I would never get any of my money back, because that is the risk, the thing that I had agreed to when I purchased the platform or the games. They are refunding me all of my money that I have spent on technology, hardware, software, and DLC. All of it. So what is the risk to me? Now, I didn't know that purchasing it, but by the way, that's incredible. From a business perspective, this is a massive loss for Google. Massive. Because they have been paying people salaries, they have been paying servers, they have been paying places to print off these controllers or build these controllers, right? Like production lines, all of that. And you would recoup those costs through purchases. They're literally saying, have all your money back. Sorry, it didn't work out right. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy that this is happening, that Google's doing that. Not that it's crazy that Google Stadia is ending. I think we all saw the writing was on the wall probably the last couple of years. Not a huge shock, but like crazy that they're doing this type of goodwill back to the consumers. Now, again, you could also make an argument, Justin, Google's a trillion dollar industry. Yeah, they can do that. Yeah, they can, but they didn't have to, but they chose to, and understanding that it was the best for the players. Now, before I move on to some other components of this Google Stadia conversation I'm having, I also want to say this. As we talk about something like this shuttering or closing, this is sort of like when studios close and shutter. These are people who have worked really hard for probably half a decade on the initial idea of Stadia, launching Stadia, getting in production, trying to promote Stadia, trying to be champions of it, trying to get it alive, to ultimately come to an end where there is no more runway. So for those people, I hope you find jobs well. I hope you take care of your family. I hope that Google is providing them a good leaving as well, or whatever's happening, or they're transitioning into different roles within the organization as well. Okay, so that is kind of the crazy situation of what has happened with Google Stadia. So let's actually take a couple of questions so that we can then break this down. So hold on a second. I have got a setup here. Let's take this first caller. We actually had someone call in. I don't know this guy, but let's take a listen to it, shall we?
Well, Justin, it's happened. And I hate to say it, but I told you so. I knew this was going to happen. Earlier today, you've probably already talked about this on the show, but they shut down, or announced they're going to shut down your beloved Stadia. It just shows that we're not ready for whatever streaming future that video games is supposed to be. Consumer interest wasn't there. The infrastructure's not there. And I'm just happy to know that they're going to refund the hardware and software purchases that people have bought. But I think this goes a long way to show that consumer trust in Google should be low from here on out. Whether it's Google Wave or Google Glasses or now Stadia, they have a habit of canning things without seeing if they're going to prove in the long term. It shows me a couple of things. Number one, that the infrastructure is not there here in America yet. Streaming may be a great idea in Japan, or maybe a great idea in other areas, but here in America it's not. Number two, it also shows me, based on the fact that they're refunding everyone's hardware purchases, software purchases, that this project didn't have a lot of buy-in at all. And while they tried to put up a good front, I think that it shows that people just didn't buy streaming games. I really think that Amazon Luna and other types of this are going to go the same way eventually. Whether Amazon will refund people's purchases there, I don't know. I do think this is a huge victory for people who say their collections should be physical only. Zablanc, I'm looking at you. But time will tell as to whether companies will continue to dip their toe in it. I wonder if this will even stunt some of Nintendo's cloud gaming initiatives in the future. Well, I've got to drive through Texas now. I hope you guys have had a great show. Justin, pat you on the back. I'm sorry for your loss. But like I said, I told you so. See you next time, guys.
All right, so that is Mr. Estes, kind of taking a little bit of a victory walk. You know, what I'm saying like, hey, I'm right. I will be contrary to a little bit of Mr. Estes. Yes, I believe that here first thing I would say this is when Google came out and first said they were doing this, we all said it's going to be dead because Google kills any ideas that don't work well for them, right? So we agreed on that. Google's like faith in or consumer faith in a product going to fruition lasting a long time. Yeah, I mean that I definitely agree with. Is the world, the statement of like is a streaming service, cloud gaming, it's not the way of the future, right? It's dead like the doorknob. So a couple things. This industry is built on evolution. It's built on trying something different. It's built on being better. It's built on creating new ideas and new ways to experience games and to evolve and to help create platforms and technology that allows for artists to tell their story. I don't believe that Stadia is a complete waste or complete failure. It may have actually been ahead of its time. Will something like this happen to Amazon Luna? Possibly. But when you look at like what the work is that Xbox is doing into xCloud, right? And cloud gaming there, it's the same idea, but it's not the only leg of the stool that Xbox is standing on, right? Xbox has so much more, so their stool is more steady, right? Whereas for Stadia, there was only one leg on that stool. So inevitably the stool will fall over. I think streaming, cloud gaming, on-demand gaming, it will eventually continue to pick up. We see organizations trying this as networks across the US, North America, and other zones and areas continue to grow, then the network connectivity continues to be there, and more companies will try different ideas of on-demand streaming content. I think Stadia may be a little bit ahead of its time. That's not to say it's not without fault, because it absolutely has fault. I am not to argue on that at all. So that's my thought on it. So let's take a couple of more questions in regards to it. But again, my commentary there is so important of, I think we need an industry. We need ideas to push things forward. And I think that, yes, there's an argument of like the collectors, the physical. I get that. But this idea of making gaming accessible to people in different ways to tell stories, I think is important. And I think that, 5 years from now, we're going to talk about a very different streaming service or streaming time or infrastructure, right? And yes, there will still always be a collector's market. There will still always be physical. But I think that Stadia, despite being a failure at this point, pushed us to try something different and to think a little bit differently. And I think you will see those ramifications in the industry. It was, here and burnt out, but I do think it has some potential to it. All right, so let's talk about. I got some messages, I got some emails. All right, so first question comes from Zablanc. Zablanc asks, Justin, my condolences for your loss. My question for you is, which Stadia game are you now the most determined to finish, if any, by the January 23rd closure date? So I have actually got up my Stadia account right here. So let's look at the games that I purchased or have access to. In my library, Cyberpunk 2077. So this was such a funny thing, because I think Cyberpunk, I picked up Google Stadia when they offered, if you bought Cyberpunk, you got Google Stadia for free, right? So the fact they were bundling in games with a platform, I thought was absolutely brilliant. Cyberpunk is so funny because I think had Cyberpunk even broke a little bit of a different way, that it actually, if Cyberpunk was having the success that Cyberpunk is having now, when Cyberpunk released back in 2019, Google Stadia may have actually been a bit of a different story, because I think everyone would have wanted to be played Cyberpunk, and you could have got it through Google Stadia. And I think that was such a big selling point for them, right? And again, also the Cyberpunk version of, or Google Stadia's version of Cyberpunk actually ran really, really good, actually much better than the consoles, because it was running off the cloud base. So it was so much easier. So Cyberpunk is actually a game that I would love to really dive back into. And again, it's having this resurgence. I was like, I got to go back to Cyberpunk. Far Cry 6, I had a great time, but I'm probably not going to jump right back that. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. This frustrates me because I haven't cared a lot for the Assassin's Creed, but this was Vikings, it was Ireland, it was England. I felt more connected to it. I understand it. I understand the lore, the history around it. So I was like, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. As a matter of fact, I got the Seasons Pass and I got the frickin' DLC that came out recently as well. I love Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I would love to say, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I enjoyed Stadia, because I could play Assassin's Creed Valhalla and not have to have a big console, and I had access to it, and I enjoyed my time with it. But I mean, that's a massive game. Sure, what else we got here? Watch Dogs Legions. I never even jumped into it. I got on a sale for like a tenner, so that was great. Jedi Fallen Order. To be honest, I've got some hours into that. I want to finish off that. I'm excited to see the new Jedi Fallen Order story, so I want to jump into that. Avengers I picked up on sale. Division picked up on sale. Destiny, like there's so many games. So if I was to say like where am I going to spend my time, probably going to spend my time on Fallen Order because I want to really get through that. Probably go back a little bit of Cyberpunk and a little bit to Valhalla is probably where I'll spend my time now. So yeah, there is that. It's unfortunate, but it's the way things work. I mean, if we're going to come back to some other questions that are asked here as well. Okay. Let me see what other questions I have here. Someone check on Justin. Okay. Chris, HL94 asks, my question for Justin is, will you use your old Stadia controller as a paperweight, a doorstop, or a bookend? This controller right. Oh, actually, hold on a second. I'm going to flip back to the other camera here. Bear with me 1 second here. This controller right here. You know what I'm probably going to do with this, Chris? And that's funny. I'm probably going to get like a cradle or whatever and put it up on the wall or whatever with some other controllers. And it was a moment. It was a time. And to be honest, now it's a bit of a collector's item. Huh? A little bit of a collector's item. So I think, yeah, it is what it is. There was so much potential there, I think, that just never came to fruition. Let me see what else. Let's see what else we got here for questions. Frosticles asks, so when is Justin getting his Series S? Which will be then connected to another question I have here in a second. All right, let's go. So we're going to answer that question in a second. We're going to go over to another question I have. This is from Brian. Brian asks, hello, Nintendo husbandandos. I just caught wind that Google is doing what Google does and will abandon, in Justin's voice, here we go, folks, Google Stadia. I'd like to hear Justin's take on this news, considering he is the only person I've actually heard using the service. Will Justin now be looking to a companion console to his Nintendo Switch? And also, how much money did he spend on it, and what are the regrets, if any? So I'll be transparent, right? I just showed you my game collection there. A lot of those, I shouldn't say a lot of them, a good amount of those games are free to play. A good amount of them we got review codes for as well, which were free, which is great. I actually went and checked dollars to dimes. I put $250 into Google Stadia. I very rarely bought a game on full price, or never bought a game on full price. They did a lot of sales, as Ubisoft tends to do. I had a laugh for a while. I was actually thinking, I was like, Google Stadia is essentially my Ubisoft platform. So $250 return will be coming to me, and I have a controller to talk about, right? So what am I going to do? Or companion console? Well, it's interesting how much Xbox Series S costs, huh? Might be making that replacement there. Also, any regrets, if any? This will sound funny. My regret probably is that I didn't play enough Google Stadia. I didn't spend enough time with it, and I think that is a regret, right? I think there are some games I definitely jumped into and had a good time playing, but not enough of them, and not all the time. And it wasn't my default platform I went to, right? Which is, it's something you have to be strategic to think about, right? I used a lot of web browsers, but my regret is probably that I just didn't play enough games on it, if I'm being really honest with you. And so I created a digital backlog, as you see here, but I'm getting everything back, which is kind of crazy to start with as well. So yeah, I don't really think I have regrets. I mean, I think it's a statement of like it's like early adopters for everything, right? You don't know whether something's going to cut your way or not. You don't know if the technology is going to last. You don't know if it's going to be a hit. The person who bought the first iPad, you didn't know if it was going to take off. I mean, it was Apple, so it was probably going to take off, but you really didn't know, right? Tesla, you didn't really know if it was going to take off. Like these things that the first time someone bought a Nintendo, right, or any video game, or the Switch, or when we invest in buying the Wii U, man, the Wii U's amazing. I hope everyone's going to buy it. Meh, meh, meh. Do you have regret on that? No, I had fun with it. I enjoyed it. But it's a risk you take of being an early adopter. So that is kind of my statement there. Also, I want to say here as well, coming from thanks to you all, and maybe next week, I will also be able to call myself a Nintendo dad. My wife is comically pregnant and getting her eviction notice together for our little girl. Well, Brian, congratulations. Wishing you absolutely the best, your wife the best in that as well. And welcome to being a Nintendo dad and the Nintendo dad family. So that is very, very exciting. Let me take a look here if there are any other questions from Discord. And I've like people have been, I don't want to say people have been dunking on me because that's not right. But people have definitely been like, hey, what's up with that? What's going on, Justin? Yeah, I'm getting a lot of support from people saying, come on over to Xbox. So, how long has this rant been? It's been about 20 minutes. I think my final statements are like, I think that I enjoyed my time with Stadia. It's unfortunate that it's ending. It is what it is. There's some great games I look forward to playing. I can't believe Google is refunding it. That's absolutely incredible. And I think that this will be a touchstone moment in gaming, right? That we not that like we're all like, oh my gosh, right? But rather it's like, hey, remember Google Stadia? That was something that happened. And it'll be interesting to see in 5 to 10 years how all this actually trickles down. What does cloud gaming look like? I think the other question that is maybe being asked is like, well, what does this mean for Nintendo? Nothing. It means absolutely nothing for Nintendo at all. And the reason being is much like my analogy earlier about Xbox and the stool, the fact that they have so many legs that they're standing on that they can actually have one that is cloud gaming and still be steady. It's the same case for Nintendo, right? You still have physical hard cartridges that you can pick up. Nintendo isn't leaning 100% into only streaming, right? My question would be very interesting about like what does happen to Amazon, right? Also, does Amazon Luna now try and get into that marketplace a lot quicker because now there is a void that's being created by Stadia? I don't know. I think it was a little bit of a bit of an early sign or a bit of the writing was on the wall when Ubisoft announced their most recent or the new Assassin's Creed coming, and it was not being named to go to Stadia. That was an indicator for me. I thought mentally, I was like, "Yep, things are done here." There's some back deal conversations occurring that are ensuring that it's not showing up on Stadia. So that is kind of it. That's kind of my rant and rave about Google Stadia. Hopefully, that has answered some of your questions. I think it's a very interesting conversation. I think it's this will be a very interesting journey. I'd love to see a documentary about the life and times of Stadia, how everything happened, where it all fell apart, the decisions that were made to get here. But folks, that is it. So for one last time, thank you so much for listening to me rant about Google Stadia. Take care. Bye-bye.